Well, good morning. And let me extend my welcome to worship this morning. My name's Adam Hildebrand. I get to be one of the pastors here. It's such a joy to be in worship with all of you, whether you're joining us here in person or you're joining us online. We're excited to be together today as we kick off a new series together. Lots of things happening in the life of our church, lots of things going on, lots of things happening in the world around us. And so before we get going, I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much. Last week we talked a little bit about bringing some donations went to Augusta. I got to be a part of delivering those on Wednesday. You guys just showed out in such an incredible way. Your generosity was overwhelming. We filled up 3 truck beds, a minivan, a trailer, and a church van full of supplies that went to Augusta, and they were so grateful. And so thank you for the ways that you love them. I talked to my friend out there, the church that we took stuff to on Wednesday, and he said all of it was gone by Thursday. That there was so much need and so much opportunity to serve people that all of the stuff that we dropped off on Wednesday was gone on Thursday. And so all of the water, all of the peanut butter and jelly, all of the meat, all of the gasoline, all of those things were gone. And so thank you. There's going to be lots of opportunities in the coming weeks and months to be involved in recovery projects in Augusta, in North Carolina, in Florida, as we kind of look to the next week and see what that has to bring as well. So just a general thank you, and keep it up. You're doing an amazing job. The flood buckets, those will end up in North Carolina or Florida as we continue to be in service to those around us, as we continue to love people well, to love the people that God loves, which is all of us. As we jump into this series, I just want to remind you that back in January, we talked about this year. We said 2024 has every opportunity to be an incredibly divisive year. And yet, we're still here. We're still here. We're still loving each other. We're still serving with each other. We're still walking beside one another. And the coming weeks provide us with lots of opportunities to divide once again. But I think that there's a better way for us to live. I think there's some opportunities for us to have some really meaningful conversation about who it is that we want to be. And let me just preface all of this by saying that nobody's going to stand up here on stage and nobody's going to stand up here and speak and say, tell you a political stance. Nobody's going to tell you how to vote. Nobody's going to tell you who to vote for. Nobody's going to tell you as pastors or as a church, this is our political stand, because when we pick a side, we really sideline the church, and we're not trying to do that. We're trying to really be people who connect with one another, who serve one another, who love one another well. But what we're really going to be talking about is how during this election season we should behave. And the real question we want to ask is, who do we want to be? What do we want to be known for? And I think the question that rings most powerfully in my mind right now is, who do we want to be on November 6th? When all the votes are counted, when everything's all said and done, who do we want to be? What do we want to be known for after this election is over? After this time of division is over? What do we want to be known for? So let's just start really easy. I'm going to do a straw poll right here, right now. We're going to kind of figure out where we stand as a church on maybe the most important thing that you're going to vote on in your entire life. Who likes creamy peanut butter? Creamy peanut butter? Okay, there you go. All right. Creamy people. All right, let me see my crunchy people. Where are my crunchy people? Yikes. Crunchy people got some vibes this morning. All right, crunchy people. Where are my swing voters? Who is indifferent about peanut butter? Who is allergic to peanuts and is like, I don't even like peanut butter. I don't want to be a part of that. I can't deal with all of this drama around crunchy or creamy. I just can't do this. Yeah. That was great. We were pretty well divided here in terms of creamy and crunchy and the way that we see the world and the way that we understand peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and what those should look like. And I know that's kind of silly. But what about this? Did you feel any kind of way about the people who liked a different kind of peanut butter than you? Some of you are like, yes, but I don't want to say it out loud. Some of you are like, I can't believe those people like crunchy. Are you kidding me? And the others of you are like, I can't believe they don't like the crunch in their sandwich. What are they thinking? It's just smooth all the time. Like, I don't understand the creamy peanut butter. What's going on there? Or what if we had this conversation? What if we began to tell each other that people who like creamy peanut butter are terrible people, and they're actually doing damage to the great institution of peanut butter and jelly? Or on the flip side, what if I told you that the crunchy folks don't know what they're doing and they're stealing all of your money with an inferior product? I mean, whole chunks of peanuts, they didn't even mash it up all the way. Well, see, what I find so amazing about our world is that we find it so easy to divide people into categories. And oftentimes, when we begin to divide people, we begin to label them based on a certain brand or ideology of things. We begin to think certain things about people who like creamy peanut butter, and we begin to think certain things about people who like crunchy peanut butter. We begin to set up all of these ideas about who they are, what they think, and what kind of person they are, just based on peanut butter. And what can happen over time is that a person's value in our eyes can be connected to their understanding of peanut butter, of what kind of peanut butter they like. And on the other side of that, many of us find it easy to claim a part of our identity based on what kind of peanut butter we like. And slowly, ever so slowly, we become more and more entrenched in our ideals to the point that when you attack my peanut butter, you attack my personhood. Now, I'm hopeful that you can see where we're going with this point, that you understand this is about more than just peanut butter. So when we talk about the idea of the B campaign, a campaign for kindness, what we're really talking about is identity and how we want to be known in the world and how we want to be seen by others and how we want to see others. Because I believe thoroughly that we can disagree about things without attacking the core of who a person is. That we can disagree politically, theologically, ideologically, and still love each other unconditionally. That disagreement is inevitable, that we will disagree about things, but division is actually a choice that we make. That we don't have to divide just because we disagree, that we can learn to disagree agreeably. And that the way that we live our lives and what we do in the world and how we engage other people actually says a lot about what we believe and who we want to be. I like the way James Clear in his book Atomic Habits says it this. He says, every action is a vote for the type of person we want to become. Every action we take is a vote for the type of person we want to be. It's shaping who we are in the world. The identity that we hold with others. So over the next month, we're going to jump into this Old Testament book that gives us a framework, I believe, for how we can be people who can rise above the election tenor, who can be known for something more than just who they voted for. It's the book of Micah, and in the book of Micah, there's this amazing thing going on. Micah speaks to a city that's divided. I know you're surprised that other people in the world have been divided before. That there has been political division as long as there have been people. That people have pushed against each other and not understood their identity and who they really are in the world since the very beginning of time. And Micah speaks to a group of leaders and a group of prophets who have worked together to take advantage of people. Again, I know you can't imagine that happening in the world. What they did is turn people into products, and they used God's name to do so. So Micah tells them that this division that they have that's taking place is actually going to lead to their destruction. And the people go, okay, God, our bad. We're sorry. What do you want from us? So in Micah chapter 6, verse 8, we hear this amazing thing that Micah says to all of the people. He says this, "He has told you, O mortal," or O human, "what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? But to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God." But if we back that up, this is actually a response to what the people say in response to this judgment on division. They say something amazing. The people stand up and they go, what do we have to give, God? What do we have to give you in order to get you back on our side? Because we don't want to give up the power, and we don't want to give up the privilege, and we don't want to give up the things that we have. So what do we have to give you? You can read about it in the verses that precede this. Micah 6:6 says this, "With what shall I come before the Lord and bow myself before God on high? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves that are a year old? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams and 10,000s of rivers of oil?" People kind of go a little extravagantly. They kind of overemphasize this. There's a little sarcasm in this. And then they say this, which is just fascinating. "Shall I give my firstborn for my transgressions, the fruit of my own body for the sin of my soul?" And then Micah responds in this way. He's told you, O human, what is good and what the Lord requires. The people respond to God by saying, whatever it takes, we'll give you whatever we got, just to hold on to our own power. I can't imagine a world where we would sacrifice the people closest to us to hold on to power. And yet, I think a lot of us wonder why our dinner tables are so uncomfortable and why we can't talk about things that are really important in our small groups. And I think it's because we've sacrificed relationships on the altar of politics. We've become so caught up in our own understanding of the world and the challenges facing the world that we've not stopped to consider that others might have a different view. And that's okay. It's actually good. In fact, what I've found is that many of us have begun to see our faith through the lens of politics, as opposed to seeing politics through the lens of our faith. And that causes all sorts of problems with how we engage with one another. And we end up sacrificing relationships. And we can't have meaningful conversations. And when our family gets together for Thanksgiving, there's just this awkward tension because our identity has become so wrapped up with the flavor of peanut butter that we like. And we know that when we sit down at the dinner table, something is going to come up that's going to lead to a rant about why creamy peanut butter is the best peanut butter. And there's going to be a retort about crunchy peanut butter. Because so much of our identity is based in those things. and not in the relationships that really matter. Leslie Newbigin, a missiologist in the 70s, talked about the world that he saw around us. And he said as the Western world becomes more secularized, that politics would become the new religion. That politics would replace religion in many of our lives. He said that devotion and passion, once reserved for Jesus, would be transferred to political parties and ideology. And instead of looking to God and the church to be the solution to our problems, people would look to politics for all of those answers. Again, when this becomes our whole identity, it's tough for us to have meaningful conversation. But I believe in this one small verse in Micah, we find a solution to so much of the division that's plaguing us. Micah chimes into this obvious play for power and authority and says this incredibly famous thing. He has told you, O human, what is good and what the Lord requires. To be just and kind and humble. Let's just start at the beginning, because I think that's always a good place to start. The beginning of this verse reminds us of something so incredibly important for all of us, and that I think we lose track of in all of this. The prophet said, He's told you, O mortal, O human. The word is Adam, which I like that word. It's a good one. Would make a great name. If anybody's considering names for children, Adam. It just means human. It means a person. Somebody created in God's image. That has the very spark of the divine. And the good news is, if you're hearing this today, you are a human being. Congratulations. You did it. But so often what happens when we push other humans aside because of their view on certain topics or their political affiliation, we don't recognize their humanity. And that creates a huge problem. A recent Gallup poll found that 50% of Americans rate the overall state of moral values in the U.S. as poor. More than 75% of Americans believe that morals are getting worse. And they cite the greatest problem as a lack of consideration of others. We don't consider other people human based on their views of the world, based on which peanut butter they like. Just because someone likes chunky peanut butter and just because somebody likes creamy peanut butter does not make them less human. Just because someone votes red and you vote blue, or vice versa, does not make the other one less human. Their identity is not wrapped up in how they vote or how they see the world. Their identity is from God. Our identity is in our humanity. Our identity, for those of us who call ourselves Christian, is in Christ. Not in how we vote or who we support. And if we see people as people, we can have real, meaningful conversations that might actually do some good in the world. When we begin to see people as God sees people, we can really get to work together. More often than not, we push people aside because of their views. The professor and author David Livingston Smith said it this way, and I love this quote. He said, "When we dehumanize others, what we tend to find is that we ourselves are less human. And we need to reclaim our sense of humanity. Let's get back to being human, to understand that there are other humans around us all the time. To remove this idea that you are wrapped up, that your whole being, your whole identity is found in a political party. Because what slowly happens is that we remove people from politics. Like, politics is really, in our country, voting is the power of the people. But if we remove the people out of that equation, all we're fighting for is power. And we've stopped fighting for people. People are not issues. Issues are issues. And the only way to solve the complex issues of our day is to be human and to see other people as human as well. To respect their very humanity, their voice, their opinion. And the division in our country, our culture, and our communities is the result of this disconnection from one another. But we're not going to be those people, are we? We're not going to be people who can't work with others who are different than us. Because we can do a lot more good with all of the people who don't agree than we can with only half of the people who do agree with us. We took all that stuff to Augusta this weekend. Nobody asked us where we stood on issues. We got a lot more done because we did it together. I love this old quote by Carl Sandburg that said this. He said, "There's an eagle in me that wants to soar, and there's a hippopotamus in me that wants to wallow in the mud." And more often than not, I end up like that hippopotamus, wallowing and throwing mud, when I could be an eagle that soars. Micah says, see each other as humans, see each other as people, see each other as creations of the Most High God, and do what is good. This word tov in the Hebrew. It's an incredibly important word. I don't know if you remember back in the very beginning when God created humans, he looked at them and he said, it's good, it's tov. All of the creation was tov, it's good. This word good implies something more than just good. Like sometimes we downplay good. We like great, but like good, we're like, oh yeah, it's good. Good in the Old Testament is good. It implies something fulfills its purpose. It describes something that's beautiful, life-giving, morally good. It invites us to see possibilities all around us. Jesus picks up on this sort of language in Matthew chapter 9. He's talking to some religious leaders, and he says to all of them, hey, go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. Jesus says, stop sacrificing people. Be merciful. Stop sacrificing relationships. Be merciful. And this looks like listening and hearing one another and praying for people who think differently than you. Not that they'll think the same way that you do, but if you see them as enemies, then pray for them. That's what Jesus tells us to do, to pray for our enemies. And what we find when we pray for our enemies is that we don't have as many enemies anymore. Because the only people who pray are people. People pray. Let's show people some mercy. Let's see them as human. Let's stop sacrificing people on the altar of politics. Let's be known for something good, something just and kind and humble. Let's be those things to one another. Let's treat each other fairly. Let's be nice and don't assume that you or your party or your way of seeing the world has all the right answers. Let's have enough humility to say, you know what? This is what I think, but I could be wrong. I've been married long enough that I'm really good at saying that. John Wesley, the founder of the Methodist movement, had some ideas for us that kind of go along the same lines. He said this: I met with those of our society who had votes in the ensuing election and advised them in this way. 1, to vote without fee or reward for the person they judged most worthy. Don't take advantage of people for their vote. 2, to speak no evil of the person they voted against. And lastly, to take care that our spirits are not sharpened against those that voted on the other side. Sounds like Wesley wanted us to be just and kind and humble. So what do you want to be known for? Because I think it's time that we stop prioritizing politics over people. I think it's time that we stop being shaped more by social media than by the scriptures. I think it's time that we stop being shaped by talking heads instead of talking to God. I think it's time that we stop being more concerned about the work of the Senate than we are about the work of the Spirit. I think it's time that we move beyond being so concerned about who's in the White House, more so than who's in our own house.